Hi, Cherie Hartwick here, doing some more Zentangle. Way back in June, I did a touch of Zentangle for the OPC, and we're going to do a few more videos available to everybody on the OPC YouTube channel and somewhere else on their website. I'm not sure where, but I'm sure they will tell you where. In June, we did looking down at my notes, we did 4 tangles, and I'm trying to keep them very simple so people who are interested in starting to do this don't feel too intimidated. This is actually called Art for the Non-Artist, and it's supposed to be a meditative, relaxing art form, and don't be scared off by the word art form. It's very simple to do, and everything is set out so that you can step by step do what I'm going to do. And the tangles that we did in June were mist, tipple, now I'm thinking, floors, and crescent moon. Some of them have names that I remember, some of them have names that you can relate to, they look like what the name is, and some don't, so the names are not that important. Every tangle that we do, because a lot of people invent these tangles, the ones I'm going to be presenting are official Zentangle tangles, and they are done by the originators of Zentangle, Marie Thomas and Rick Roberts, and I'm going to try and keep within their official ones as long as I can, and then maybe we'll break out later into some of the more unofficial ones that are just as interesting and just as easy to do. To be a tangle, it has to be able to be the design, or a tangle has to be able to be deconstructed into easy steps that anybody can follow. I'm going to show you a couple of them. Whoops, I got to turn the camera down, and it'll probably keep it down from now on until the end. So this is, and I have to adjust it, so be patient with me. Okay, I have to turn it this way. This is what's called a step out. And you'll find, if you're really interested in Zentangle, do a search on Facebook or YouTube and just put in Zentangle, and you'll find all kinds of instructions and videos on how to do a lot of different things. And everything will be in steps, because like tipple, which we did last month, starts out with a circle or an orb, and then you add some more orbs to it, and then you add even more, and then you add a little shading with a graphite pencil. Today what we're going to be doing this one, which is called Nippa, and it starts out with orbs as well, but then you add some wiggly lines and more wiggly lines, and then you still shade the orbs. To me, I mean, it can look like anything you want to look like. Most Zentangles aren't supposed to be representative of anything in particular. Sometimes when I do this, it looks like knots of wood in a slab of wood with, the grain of wood running up and down. Sometimes this one sort of looks like water rushing past rocks or something like that, but it doesn't have to look like anything in particular. So that is one of the new ones we're going to do today. And just to give a refresher on what we did last in June, these are the ones that we did, and here's Nippa, which is just orbs, and we shaded them with graphite, and I came back and filled in between some of the little nooks and crannies with the black pen. This is the one that's called Mist, and you can see it's just wiggly lines going down and then little dots, and you vary the length of the lines and the number of dots any way that you want. and it's done with a little bit of graphite shading around the edge. This one is called Floors, and the founders designed this one because it looked like the tile in their bathroom, and it looks like a floor tile. And basically it's a square grid that you draw first, and then you put these little diamond shapes where the grids intersect and fill them in. And again, it has a little bit of graphite shading on the same side of all of them to give them a little bit of a puffy look. This one, which is probably the most complicated of these four, is called Crescent Moon. And you can see, obviously, there's a crescent, which marches around the shape, whatever shape you want it to be. And then you do a line around each crescent, which is called an aura. This is a term that you'll hear a lot in Zentangle, and all it is tracing the shape that you have just drawn. And like in this one, you do it many, many times. And where it hits another line, you just stop and then you draw another one. And then a little shading is put on each side to give it some depth. The interesting thing with Zentangle is when we did this video, the original video in June, we learned these four tangles. But you can, the interesting thing of it is you can take those four tangles, and what we did, we drew a Z. You can see the Z on my paper, which stands for Zentangle, and it's always, most of my basic classes start out doing that. And all it does is divide your piece of paper into areas to put your designs. But if you take a different paper and put a different design rather than a Z, this is more or less was just a scribble, and you can kind of follow how I did it. I went around like this, came back up, did this, and then kind of scooped over here. And I put those same four designs in different areas on that piece of paper, and it looks completely different. Here's another one. Same thing. This one is a little bit less complicated in that it's bigger areas, and I only had the designs in one area. This one, you see I put floors in 3 different areas, and I put tipple in 2 different areas. And then to get even more interesting, you can take those same designs and you can do them on a circle. These, in Zentangle talk, this is called a Zendella. And same 4 patterns. Here's floors, mist, mist. The crescent moon is going on lines this way, and this one I think you can see I just did kind of a zigzag this way and a zigzag this way. And those lines that you put inside your whatever you're drawing on is called a string, and that can be done in many different ways. And what I'm doing today, I'm going to be working on a tile. These little squares of paper, we call them tiles, this size, which is called an apprentice size, and it's like 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. Traditionally, and to begin with, we worked on tiles that were this size, which is 3.5 inches. But for ease of showing you so you can see better what I'm doing, I'm using the bigger tiles. And there is a system or a ceremony to doing Zentangle. And you don't always have to start out this way, but I usually, with people who are just beginning, I think this is a good way to start. And the only supplies you're going to need if you've never done this before is some kind of paper. It can be, copy paper, note card, or, index cards, a sketchbook or something that you have. It doesn't have to be this official paper that I'm using. It is fun to use the official paper, but you don't have to start out that way. And then I would say just on your sheet of paper, draw a square approximately like I say, 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. You don't even have to measure it. You could just draw it freehand. The other thing with Zentangle is we don't use rulers and we don't use erasers. The other supplies you need is just a pencil. This happens to be an official Zentangle pencil, but I use other kinds, just a regular number 2 pencil. You could even use a mechanical pencil. More or less the old style mechanical pencils that had the thicker lead, because we are going to use the pencils for doing shading. The other thing that you can use or will need, this is called a tortillon, and all it is a piece of rolled up paper. You could use a Q-tip, you could use your fingertips with a piece of tissue, anything to move the graphite from the pencil around. And but we'll get to that later. So the first part of the ceremony when you're doing Zentangle is to do 4 dots in the corners, and it's about a pencil width away from the corner, or about, oh, it's a little over 1/4 of an inch, but you know, that doesn't really matter. And then you're going to draw lines. You're going to connect the dots, and it doesn't have to be real straight. You know, mine, that's not real straight, but it's there. My daughter, who's also a certified teacher, loves to do real wavy borders. I like to do straighter ones. So there's my border. And again, all this is doing is giving you a place to put your designs. Then we're going to divide this, and because I figured since we're doing something new, we're going to divide it in a different way than we did the very first time. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a finished tile of what we're going to do today to give you an idea of the string that we're going to use. And as you can see, it's still straight lines. And we're going to use a couple of the old patterns that we used in June, and then I'm going to show you a couple new patterns. So, to draw my string, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line from one side to the other. And this is showing up nice and dark, but you want it sort of light. You don't have to bear down and just, you know, put a real dark line in. And then I'm going to draw another line down here from the bottom side to this far side, and then I'm going to just divide this space in half. So we're going to do 4 patterns, and so we have 4 different sections. Now I'm going to start off with the old patterns, just to give you a little confidence. If you followed along in the other video that I did in June, you should have some confidence as to where to start. Now the pens I'm going to use, this is the only place other than shading that you use the pencil. And I'm using a Micron brand pen, but you can use any kind of a pen. If just a regular old ballpoint pen is what you have on hand, that's fine. This is a Micron. This is an 8, which is a kind of a fat point. And I'm gonna, whoops, get it over the paper so you can see it. This is what I'm going to use most of the time because it's just more easily visible. On those smaller tiles that I showed you, this is what we usually use, which is a very fine tip. You just have to use whatever you're comfortable with. If you plan to go out and buy some of these supplies, sometimes Joann's and Michael's have them. Sometimes you can get a kit of 3 pens. I think this is the 3 that usually come in it, which is a 1, 01, an 03, and an 08, which gives you 3 different thicknesses of lines. The thicker one is usually handy to have anyway to fill in when you have areas that you have to fill in. But I'm going to put these 2 away, and it's important to cap them up when you're not using them so that they stay nice and wet. The micron ones, the reason they're nice is they're archival ink, and they're waterproof, and they don't run or spread, and so that's good. So after you get your border and your string drawn, you then pick up your pen, and the first one I'm going to do in one of these two square areas is that floors one that I told you about. And because it's a straight line grid, I mean, I could do it this way, so it was kind of on an angle from that space, but just for ease of learning how to do this, I'm going to make this grid following these two lines that are here already. And I'm going to use these two lines as part of my grid. So I'm going to ink them in right to my border, and I'm actually, and the other thing is you always turn your tile however it's comfortable for you to use your pen, and I'm going to ink in this line as well. Okay, now to divide this into a grid, what I usually do is just eyeballing it, because we don't use rulers. I'm thinking, okay, this is about the middle, and I'm going to take that straight across, and it sort of ends up in that point, and that's okay. And because I don't want this real small and tiny, I mean, you could do it small and tiny, but it would take you forever to do all those little diamonds. I'm going to divide each of these halves in half. And again, just draw it as straight as you can and divide this one that way. Now I want to make little boxes. So I want what I'm doing this way to be about that same size. And again, I'm just eyeballing it to make this into squares. And I'm going to draw a line down this way, and then another one. And then I'm coming over here, I'm going to have some partial ones that aren't complete because of this border that I drew. And I'm thinking this might be about a good place for one. And then maybe about here. As you can see, they're not all perfectly squares. Some of them look more like rectangles. It doesn't really matter. There's no mistakes in Zentangle. We have something that's called, might make an oops, which is an occasional opportunity that's presented suddenly, and you have an opportunity to go in a different direction. So now the next step for this one is to draw in those little diamond shapes at every intersection. Now you can do this, you can decide how you want to do this on your own. You can draw each one first like I'm doing, or you could draw one and then fill it in, draw one, fill it in. The whole idea of Zentangle, to get the Zen part of it, is you're to focus on every step that you do and every line that you draw, which takes your minds off of other things. And in this time, you know, we need to take our mind off of what's going on and get that Zen meditation thing in there. So I'm going to just keep drawing these and filling them in. Now this one, that corner, we have to just imagine where it is, and it's out of the picture, so I don't have to worry about it. Up here, I would do a half a diamond. And down here, I will do half a diamond. I'm going to fill these guys in. And this one down here, and these over here. You can see this is a very, very simple tangle to do, and it's a great space filler. A lot of times when you do your string, you'll look at it and you'll think, oh, I have this great big space. What am I going to do to fill it up? Well, this is a good one to do. And let me get this little corner down here. Okay, so that takes care of floors. I'm going to cap up my pen for a minute and get my pencil and my tortillon. And to shade floors, you just kind of scribble a little bit in each corner. And now you can see that really looks scribbly, and that's fine, because I'll show you what the tortillon does. And like I say, if you don't have a tortillon, if you have a Q-tip, that works fine, or even just a little bit of tissue or paper towel with your fingertip would work as well. So I'm just kind of scribbling in all these corners. You could do it, you could actually put graphite around the whole outer circle to make them really look like the whole center is puffed up, but we'll just do it this way for now. Now this, because I'm not seeing the corner that I'm shading, I don't have to do anything. So then I'm going to come back with the tortillon and just scrub it with the tip. See, this one's already been used and it's got a lot of graphite on it, and you just kind of go over what you just did and carry it just a little bit further, so it just kind of smooths it out, and you don't have any of that harsh scribbling lines. You can always come back and make it darker if you want, but because we don't use erasers, you don't want to add a whole lot to begin with. But you can see how this is. And sometimes after you've used a tortillon for a while, it has so much graphite on it, if you just want a touch of shading, you don't even have to add any graphite. You can just use what's on the tip of the tortillon. And that basically takes care of the floors that we're doing. So the other tangle that I'm going to do next is another one that we did before, and it's called mist. Now, mist is sort of, you think of mist as rain coming down, and but I've seen it, well, like I showed in this circle one. No, not that one. Get the right one. The circle one, because it's in a circle, is coming in from two different directions. So it doesn't always have to be from the top to the bottom. And actually, after you're finished with your whole tile, you're the one that decides which way is up, however you want people to look at the tile. But mist is very simple. And again, because I want to fill this corner with it, I'm going to like pick the middle and do my first line down the middle, and then a couple dots. And I'm going to go one way, and then I'm going to go the other way. And I do this because I've done this before, and you kind of want to get them evenly spaced, but it doesn't, you know, you don't have to worry about it too much. But sometimes I've done this and I've had one going, if I start at one end and they're far apart, and then I get over here and they're getting more crowded and more crowded. I find if I start in the middle and go two directions, they end up being more evenly spaced. Now you can even do, I'm finishing this off with just wiggly lines without any dots. Now I'm going to go in the other direction. And actually I saw somebody do this on somebody's tangle, where they actually, they had bigger wiggles than I have, but they like aura'd the wiggles, and that, to me, that takes too much concentration. I like the way it looks better when the wiggles don't really match. And usually as I get over to the outer edge, I kind of make them longer because it kind of makes a border. There. So I've got my whole area filled in with mist. Now we're going to jump into the two new tangles. And the first one that we're going to do is called Nippa. And this is the one I showed you in the step out. I'll get that and show it to you again. This is Nippa. Whoops, get it lined up. And it's just orbs like we did, whoops, over here, just circles. And what you do is you just randomly space a few and different sizes. Don't make them all the same size. Then the second step is just this wiggly line. And if you'll notice in the finished one, some of the wiggly lines go around the orb and down, and then some actually, like over here, this line, let me point with this because it's easier, this one goes and it stops at the orb, and then it starts on the other side, stops at this orb, and then finishes over there. So you can do it either way. You just kind of decide, like this one stops and stops, but then this one goes around. So you do over here I have two of them that stop at the orb, and then I have some others that go around. And you just decide this as you're coming up to them. It's nothing that has to be thought out ahead of time. And I'm going to put that in this other triangle that I have over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start drawing some circles. And like I say, you can do them big, do them little. You want a variety of them. You can have some of them peeking out from the edge of your border like that. I'm going to do another peeking out, really kind of a big one over here. Maybe a small, medium-sized one here. You can do as many as you want. Okay, then I do kind of the same thing as I did with the mist. I sort of start in the middle. And there's a nice straight line here with nothing in the way. So I'm just going to do that, and it can be real wavy, it can be a little wavy. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to see that one just skirts that. This one I'm going to have it stop and then start on this side. My next one coming down, I'm going to have that stop, stop, start again. When you draw these lines down like this, you don't want to skip over and come over here. When you start drawing it, finish drawing it. Pick up your pen around the object that you're doing it, and then start on the other side. You get a more continuous looking line. Now this one I'm going to go around and around, because this makes it for interesting when I start going around them. And then this can be straighter. And it just, you start getting some interesting, now see this one I'm going to have it stop at that orb and finish over here. This one, and see this one you want the widths in between the lines to vary. You don't want them to all be the same. And I'm going to do this one's going to stop, but this one I'm going to have it go around down there. And then this one I think I'm going to have it go around. The only thing you do, like this one skirts the border, and that's okay. And then this one kind of ends up on the border. And then I'm going to, this one, and this one is kind of straight. Now I'm going to finish up over here. You see, it doesn't take very long to fill up a whole space. It's just when you come to the objects, your orbs, you just have to decide, okay, am I going around it? Like this one, I'm going to go around. But this is kind of a big orb, so I'm probably going to keep having it touch for a while until, well, maybe like right here. Then I'm going to have it go around. In Zentangle, it's not necessarily the finished product that you're looking for. It's the journey that your pen takes and your mind takes. And the whole idea is to focus on what you're doing and kind of achieve a Zen state of mind and relax while you're doing it. So that takes care of Nippa. Now to shade Nippa, again, I've got my graphite pen, and I'm going to do this just like we did Tipple. And I'm going to just run some graphite around the outside edge of each of these circles, or half circles. And then I'm going to come back with the tortillon and follow just what I did. You want to smooth out the graphite, but you want to leave a little bit of white in the center. Sometimes it's really hard to do on these small ones, and you just don't worry about it. It's okay if it fills it in totally. And this is also one of those areas where you might have enough graphite left on your tortillon to fill in the whole thing. So that's all we're going to do on the NIPA right now. So, as I talked about earlier with the crescent moon that we did in June, there's a few terms and a few techniques that we use in Zentangle that you're going to hear over and over again. And one of them is called the Halabow effect. And so we're going to do a pattern called Halabow. Let me find it in my book to just show you the step out for it. 1 second. Okay. So this is a step out for Halabow. And you know, looking at the end result, it looks very complex, but it's nothing but straight lines. And so you start out with 2 parallel straight lines, and then you do 2 more parallel lines intersecting. But again, just like I said with the NIPA, when I come to this line, I stop, I pick up my pen, start on the other side, and finish that line. And then you just keep adding more lines and more lines till you like the way it looks. There's no certain number, there's no certain direction. These are all straight lines. They could be curvy lines, they could be skinnier lines, they could be fatter lines. Some people do the lines fat enough that they put Zentangle patterns inside the lines, which is another fun thing to do. But it's nothing difficult. And this one, like I say, some of the names for the patterns have interesting stories. And like I say, this one teaches the technique of how to draw behind something. And as I understand it, this was developed by Marie Thomas's daughter's husband, whose last name is Halabow. And I don't know if he worked at a lumber yard or what, but he looked at a pile of lumber and he thought that this is kind of what this looked like when he finished doing it. I'm thinking it reminds me of the old game of pickup sticks that we had when we were kids, where you'd have this little container of plastic sticks and you'd pour them out and then you had to remove one at a time. This looks like a stack of pickup sticks, but it's really a neat, interesting, fun tangle to do. So that's what we're going to do in this last section. And I'm going to actually, since I have one line drawn over here, I'm actually going to make, this is not going to be the start of my pattern, but I am going to make a parallel line to that one. So it's going to be one of my lines in my Halabow, but that's not actually the beginning of it. So I'm going to, like I say, it doesn't have to be any certain direction. I'm just going to go in this direction and make a straight line to the border, and then trying to keep them about the same distance apart. And this is, you know, maybe at like 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to make that other straight line. So actually in this case I'm auraing what I just did. And now I'm going to do the Halabow effect. I'm turning my tile a little bit, and I'm going to draw a line coming from here to here. And again, I'm going to bring my line down. I'm going to stop at that line, pick up my pen, start on the other side, and finish it. Start my line here. When I come to this line, stop, pick up my pen, and finish it over here. Now I'm going to turn my tile again. I'm going to do another one coming over here. Stop, pick it up. Now this one, as it comes down, is going to meet that one, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 of them intersecting, and that's okay. Stop, pick up your pen, bring it down. Now you can kind of start looking, okay, where do I have a big empty area? You can actually, like I have an empty area here, I could do another one that's sort of on the top. See how this one looks like it's on the top? There's nothing going, you know, it's not going under anything. That's the same way with this one. But then I might have one start here and go this way, down here, and here. And now I could either draw it on this side or on this side. I think I'm going to draw it on this side. Have it come down and end up there. Now I got this big open space over here, so I'm going to do another one kind of at this angle. And like I said, you could just keep doing this until you like the way it looks. There's no set number. You could just keep going. What my daughter likes to do, and a lot of people do, is, and it does change the whole look of it, is she comes back and she puts like a little orb in the middle of each one of these open sections, even if it's a little one. Some people shade this whole inside to make it look puffy. I don't tend to do that. So if you made this big enough, like if I took this whole tile and did a huge, great big hollow bow design on it, you could come back and put a different Zentangle design in each of these open spaces. You could also like shade solid inside each one of those, but I'm not going to do that either. Let me make these a little bit bigger so they're all about the same little size. It's just like a little decoration that you put in the middle. Now to shade the hollow bow, what you're going to do with your pencil is you're going to shade. I use this line over here too, wherever it looks like it's going under something. So I'm gonna do a little shading, and you just do like maybe 1/8 of an inch, and I'm gonna shade this end. And sometimes it helps if you follow that whole line that you did. So I'm going to shade over here, and then on this side, and then on this edge of my border. Sometimes when it gets into real small areas like this, what's going to happen is the whole thing is going to end up being somewhat shaded. And if you notice, I'm kind of going in the direction that the lines are taking. It just makes it easier for shading. It looks smoother. This big one that I first did, I'm going to shade that on each end. And now I'm going to turn my tile a little bit, put a little more shading here, a little on this side, and just keep going until I've shaded. Like say this is another one that the area is so small that it's going to be completely shaded, and that's okay. You'll see how neat this really looks. Okay, I'm shading over here. I've only got a few more to do. This is one of those, sometimes as I'm using the tortillon, I find an edge that I didn't shade, like this one over here, and you can always come back and do it. And I've only got one more long line to do, and that's this one. So wherever it looks like it's going under something, you shade it. And then you come back with the tortillon, and again, you kind of, little circular motions help, and then just carry it just a little bit further to soften that edge. You don't want a real hard edge of graphite. But you do want a little, if possible, you want a little bit of white showing, because see how that makes it look like it's going over and under that first one that we did. And you just keep going around. I say traditionally when they first started this whole thing, it's like 10 years ago or more. I can't remember exactly how long ago they started it. I can't remember if it was 2004 or 2010. It was one or the other. They only used, were trying to simplify the whole process So they only used white tiles with black pens, so you didn't have to think about what color to use or anything. And they have since gone further, and there's gray tiles, there's tan tiles, there's black tiles that you use white pens on, there's brown pens. I mean, you can do this on any color paper you want. If you're doing it on another color paper with another color pen, you can come back and do highlights with a white pen and all those kind of things. Oops, I forgot to do my original one that I did here. Okay, now you can see how that really looks like it's going up and down. Now, I just recently saw somebody shade a hollow bow a little bit differently, which I'm going to show you. And this basically would be done on when you draw them fatter. And actually, and again, if your tortillon is pretty dirty, you don't really have to do this. But I'm just putting a little line of graphite on the outside of each of these hollow bow lines. And I might even forget some of them, but I can do it with my tortillon, which is pretty dirty. So there's just on the outside a little bit, and then again you come back and you just rub straight. I'm not trying to take it to the center at all. And what it does, it kind of makes it look like it's rounded, like it's a straw, rather than a flat ribbon, which is kind of a neat effect. But again, you don't have to do this. This is just another way to kind of enhance the hollow bow. So that's how you would shade each individual pattern that we drew. Now what I usually like to do is, and it does help a lot, in Zentangle we do shading, but we don't worry about the light source, like where the light's coming from and how it hits certain objects. You don't worry about that. Mainly we do it to make certain areas pop and just look more interesting. And you can see, and normally when you get involved in, let me find some of my other tiles over here, and some like this, not this one so much, but sometimes your string that you draw, sometimes it disappears, and that's why you don't need an eraser. That original pencil string that you drew should just disappear. And this kind of makes the border disappear, but it also puts a defining line between some of these patterns that just kind of, they end, but they end kind of funny. So what I'm going to do is on this triangle, I'm going to put some graphite, and also wherever you want the darkest graphite is where you should point the point. Now my little pencil's getting a little bit dull, but it's still got a point to it. So now see, look at over here how this is looking different, because I'm putting a line of graphite. So it defines this area more, and it defines this area more. I'm only going to do one at a time, so I'm going to go around, and I'm staying on the inside of my border. And sometimes you'll see when I do this area, sometimes you go over where you've already shaded with your pencil, and that's okay. Okay, so now I've got graphite around that whole area. I'm going to come back with my tortillon, and again, now I'm going to use that little circular motion, and I'm pulling the graphite a little bit further into that triangle. But I'm trying to leave that dark edge. I can always come back and put more to darken it, but I'm trying not to go outside the triangle. Okay. Now see what a difference that makes? It makes this stand out, and it makes this stand out better. This one, because it has a dark line on either side, is sort of standing alone already. But this one needed something This one's going to need something, and then I'm going to show you something else to do with this down here. So, I'm going to turn my tile around, and mist, usually the only thing I do with mist is I do some shading on the top. And I'm first going to do, as if this was the only shading I'm going to do, is I'm going to, again, circular motions and bring this down. And you know, a lot of times I'll do this at different, take it down different levels. I won't keep it all at the same level. I'll take some of the graphite down further than others. Okay, that's how I usually do that. But I also want to shade the whole area. Well, let's see. Have to make a decision. Yeah, I think I will. I'm not going to do this one quite as far as I did the other one, but I am going to stay inside that border, and again darken even this top that I did. And then I'm not going to go out as far. I'm going to keep it kind of close and just smooth out that graphite line. Just a little bit. Okay, so now you can see that it makes those two patterns more defined. Now on this end of this one and the end of this one, I'm going to do something a little different. On this one, I'm going to shade into the border. So I'm actually doing my graphite line on the outside, and I'm going to continue it even past where I just did that mist. And I'm just going to keep going around. And where this triangle and this one here I did really nice and dark to the inside. So this I'm doing lightly. And when I get down here I might do it a little bit darker, but not a whole lot. But I'm just doing it, keep going all the way around. And it just makes it look finished. And you'll see what I mean in just 1 minute. Okay, now I've gone all the way around, and now again with my tortillon, I'm going to smooth it out using a circular motion, and I'm trying not to go too far out. And just the tortillon, or like I say, if you have a Q-tip, it's just amazing how it smooths out those scribbly lines. And this gives the border a little definition. And it just gives the whole thing a finished look. And sometimes I can't remember if I've gone all the way around, so I just go around again. There. Now, the other thing you can do if you want to is you can add a little graphite on this outside edge of your, you know, if you've drawn a square on a bigger piece of paper on your outer border, on the outside of your border. I mean, it's really actually it's kind of hard for me to stay right on the edge of this piece of paper. It'd be easier if this was on a bigger piece of paper, you know, it would define your border better if you did this, but it works with this too. I just have to, it's okay if I go off onto this black piece of paper that I'm working on. And just go all the way around. You know, so we've gone through almost all the steps of the ceremony of doing Zentangle. And it starts out with appreciation. appreciating, you know, that you have the time to do this, that you have materials you can use. If you're using the official materials, you know, or just be appreciative of that you have any kind of materials to work with. And it also ends with appreciation. So now I'm going to do the same thing I did on the inside. Try to soften this graphite, but all of a sudden it's making the border look dimensional, like it's a rounded frame around my tangle that I did. And I like the way that looks. And it does just what it says. It adds a nice frame or a border to what we've just done. Now the last important thing to do, and it's really interesting to do this too, is you decide which way is up or down on your tile. Some of them, I mean, you could even do it on a diagonal like that, but you are the one that decides. And like I say, I usually end up, and I have to do it this way because I like it when it looks like mist is coming down. So I would put my initial here, and I have to do it upside down because the camera is showing it upside down to what I'm actually doing. So I'm going to put I do my initials in a certain design, and it's called a chop. And you can design one of your own, but you know, my last initial is an H, so I do an H. And then I do like a block C for my first initial, and my middle initial is a C as well. So that's what I put, and that tells everybody this is the way I want you to look at this tile that I just created. And you've created a piece of artwork. And then the other important thing to do, somewhere, if you're working on a piece of paper, sign it and put a date. On these official tiles, they have a place to do that. So I'm just going to sign it. And of course I don't know what today's date is. Oh, I do. I see it right on the computer. It's 11/16. And you'll be amazed if you keep doing this and you come back and you see, oh my gosh, look, I did that so long ago, and look at how I've improved. And it takes a lot of hand and eye coordination and a lot of muscle memory. That's why, like, when you're doing like these little diamond shapes, to do them all in a row, your hand starts remembering how you did that, and it gets a little bit easier as you go along. And it'll be a lot more important in a lot of other tangles that we get into. But for right now, that's the finished tile for today's session with Zentangle. And actually, before I was a certified teacher, I taught at OPC, and I called what I taught PenZen, and it was using a pen to achieve a Zen state of mind. And eventually I will have these same videos on my website, which is the same name, PenZen.com, as soon as I figure out how to do it with my daughter's help and my husband's help. And you'll be able to see them another place besides the OPC website. And so that's all for this one. And I'll be doing another one, and I'm not sure how often they'll have these available on the OPC website, but hopefully you'll have a lot of different tangles to work with. See you next time.